Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's September 14, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. Also want to thank Storm and Norman and Susie for introducing me to our guest today, Alan Berman. Where in the heck are you calling in from, Alan?
I am in Canterbury, New Hampshire,
How
in
cool
the
is that?
Lakes region.
It's a real honor and a pleasure. And thank you so much. The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Clearly, the best thing for a human being. It's certainly a matter of opinion, but in my opinion, really the only thing for a human being is love.
Yeah.
And it's a four-letter word. The Eskimos have 100 words for snow because there's 100 different uses of snow. We think love is one thing, but I mean, even the Greeks had 7 different kinds of love. All of them are relevant, and I think it's the only reason to incarnate is because you get to experience love.
I am so with you. That is the answer I get the most. Thank you. What is your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
I think probably 2 forms: music and conversation.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is you get to control the pace of those things. You can play music over and over again. You can find the nuances in it. And conversation, you have control over the pace of that also.
Yeah. And why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think they're on a mission from God.
No.
Are you the police? No, ma'am. We're musicians. I believe that Source sends out souls into the universe to collect information, analyze it, assign meaning to it, and then come back and report. What did you learn? And so I think that's what it's about.
That is so good, man. I don't get that answer, and I love that answer. But do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Well, I think it's both. I think the gathering of information, bringing in information through our perceptual tools is innate. And what we do with it is inventive. I mean, we juggle it, turn it upside down, inside out, analyze it, and make music out of it.
Yeah, that's good. And do thoughts create emotions?
No. There are, in my world, there are 3 layers of consciousness, major layers of consciousness. There's physical reality, what your body experiences. There's mental reality, what your mind and consciousness assign meaning to what we physically experience. And then in between those 2 things is emotion.
Yeah.
So emotion mediates the differences between physical and mental and gives you something to do when you can't solve a problem either physically or mentally. I mean, I broke my leg once, and as I was falling, I went, well, I can't fix this physically. It's already happened. And it doesn't matter what I think about it. That's done. What I could do was go, oh, shit. And that was the emotion. And there was something that I could do when I couldn't do either of the other 2 things.
That is good negotiation between the 2. So, fill in the blank, Alan. I don't know what I think until I
hear the words come out of my mouth.
Wow. That's funny because McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. But you're actually saying that, but you're saying you have to hear it, not just say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. Can
No,
humans Go ahead.
I learn more from the things that spill out of my mouth
Yeah.
than I do from any other format, I think.
Well, that's funny because there's a bumper sticker on a car on my street. It says, "Don't believe everything you think."
I love that.
Can humans think without language?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
we think without language all the time.
yeah,
Um, we need language to solve problems, but we don't need language to think.
yeah.
Thinking is just a form of perception, I believe.
Well, Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
I take slow, deep breaths.
Oh my God, you are smart.
Um, I send a message of safety to my inner kids.
Yeah,
I let them know it's okay, we're not in danger. And um, I think a picture's worth 1,000 words,
yeah,
but a touch is worth 10,000 pictures because you can't lie with touch.
yeah. It's heavy, dude. One of my favorite answers ever is, "What's your favorite form of information?" Craig Baldwin, the filmmaker, says, "Human touch."
I
Now,
agree.
we don't think of to human touch being information, but that was beautiful. And then Ann Magnuson doubled it. She goes, "What's your favorite form of information?" She said, "A hug."
I like that too. I mean, I trained in craniosacral therapy with Dr. John Upledger, who developed craniosacral therapy, a form of light touch, sort of osteopathic body work. And he taught us how to put our hands on people and be curious about what was going on.
Yeah,
Not to
wow.
have an agenda about fixing it or changing it, but to feel what the tissue wanted
Yeah,
to do, where it wanted to go, and just follow it in the direction it wanted to go. And I have put my hands on the shoulders of kids who had been abused
yeah,
and just felt the muscles in their shoulders release, relax, and get warm because tissue in the body responds to touch the same way a 5-year-old kid does. If the intention is helpful and compassionate, we go into relaxation, and that's what happens to tissue in the body also, if you can touch with that kind of intention. And John Upledger was a master at that.
that is good. That is really good. You taught me something there that's really important. So, Alan, your observations of humans in general, are we more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
I think we're more feeling beings. I think we can't stop feeling, so that's ubiquitous. The thinking is just assigning meaning to the feelings.
Yeah.
I, I, I I'm way more feeling than I am thinking.
Yeah.
I'm glad I know how to think. That's very useful.
Well, these are two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
I think perception is a function of the soul, and thinking is a subset of perception.
Wow. The second question from Turing is, can machines think?
Yes, they can.
Yeah.
I think thinking is mathematical. I think language is mathematical. And so given enough time and enough data points, machines will be able to draw the same kinds of conclusions we can. It's just data.
You are smart. Okay.
Just trying.
No, it's really you're very articulate and you're coming across clearly to me. I appreciate this. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I clearly more pursue happiness.
Yeah.
Meaning is a dime a dozen. Happiness is elusive and precious, and it actually requires, in my universe, happiness requires that you not be attached to your thoughts.
Wow.
Happiness requires presence, not understanding. I, one of my favorite expressions is understanding is highly overrated.
Well, it's funny because I got it from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and he says that happiness tends to not last, is more ephemeral, and meaning tends to last. And yesterday, a guy goes, same thing. He says, well, meaning is ephemeral. And I was like, whoa, that's exactly the opposite Viktor Frankl says. But it is interesting how you explained it, how you put it into words is very good. Yeah.
Well, I think the mind is not the brain.
Yeah.
The brain is constructed from DNA modeling, and it's a multi-use tool. One of those uses is to manipulate and grow aspects of consciousness. So, happiness, I think happiness is a choice.
Yeah.
I think it only happens that way.
Well, you have ESP because this is the next question. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
I'm going to go a little sideways with this. I've
Good.
been facilitating past life regressions for the last 50 years. I've done many hundreds of past life regressions. I've taught past life regressions to all other alternative healers. And so there's no question in my mind, but that consciousness is constant and eternal. And we incarnate with a percentage of that consciousness into physical form to learn stuff. But our soul is still up in Soul Central going, well, that's an interesting incarnation. I'm really glad we did that one. We learned a lot there.
Yeah.
And the thing about incarnating into physical form is in between lives in the world of the soul, there's preferences but no attachments, and there is acceptance and not judgment.
Yeah.
And so it's liberating in a way that nothing else is. But sometimes you need to have pain as a consequence of your choices in order to cement, oh, that's where that boundary is.
Yes.
And I think that's why we incarnate into physical form. We
Yeah.
need to remember where the boundaries are.
Yes. Well, what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Oh, absolutely light. A billion times faster.
Well, Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rayner's responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
A tool that will facilitate reaching altered states of consciousness.
Wow.
Meditation is such a tool. John Lilly, neurophysiologist, invented the float tank to facilitate accessing other layers of consciousness. And so any tool that will give you access, our bodies are Ferraris, but we get them without any operation manual. And so
Yeah.
we drive them like 1962 Volkswagen Beetles with no heat and no defrost. And we can't even get them out of first gear. And we wonder why we have so many problems. So any tool that would give us more access to the other layers of information, I think would be really helpful.
It's really good. Other layers of info. That's funny because the first was to facilitate to get to altered state and to other layers of information. That's really good. Really good, Alan. That was super. So what new toy do you suggest?
Well, I already invented one.
What's that?
It is a hammock that is made out of bungee cords and pieces of wetsuit so that you can float in a hot tub and essentially turn a hot tub into a sensory deprivation tank without having to have a tank with 800 pounds of salt in your backyard.
Good.
So the nervous system is adjusting to gravity even when we're asleep.
Yeah.
And that's a noisy process. The nervous system is always going. I mean, the most primal of all fears is falling. And so gravity is a test all the time, 24/7, 365. The only time we're not being tested in that way is when we're floating and our bodies are completely supported. And suddenly the universe goes quiet.
Wow.
And, I've done meditation for years and years and years. In a seated meditation, the objective is to get to a place of peace and calm.
Yeah.
It takes about 15 or 20 minutes of slow, controlled breathing to do that. In my hot tub, I go to a place that's 10 times deeper than that in about 2 minutes.
Oh,
Right. So,
I
there's
I need one of those hot tubs. You mean
you do. I can help you with that.
that is really good. Falling versus floating. Amazing. So Alan,
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say I took a class when I was a kid, a thing called Silva Mind Control.
I know
And
about it.
do you know about that?
Oh God, I love that. Silva Mind Control books. You used to be able to buy them for a nickel at garage sales.
Absolutely. But what they did was they taught you how to consciously and intentionally go to an alpha state. So if you are hooked up to an EEG, brainwave activity is measured in cycles per second. And so we're speaking and talking, you and I, that's beta level awareness. That's 13 to 26 cycles per second. As soon as you take a slow, deep breath, you're approaching an alpha state, which is 6.5 to 13 cycles per second. At 11 cycles per second, the body is at maximum healing frequency. So if you have a cold or a flu or whatever, and you know how to move your consciousness to 11 cycles per second, you can facilitate the healing process.
Which state is that called? Is that alpha?
Alpha. That's an alpha state.
That is alpha. And then what are the other two? Silva Mind.
3.5 to 6 cycles per second is theta. That's deep meditation. That's the state that Tibetan yogis get into when they're manipulating time and space.
Yep.
And physical reality. And then from, I guess, 0.1 cycle to 3 cycles is delta. And delta is the state of consciousness that newborns are in. It is wide open. It is the state of consciousness where the operating system for physical incarnation is being written.
Is that which one is we're in when we're sleeping in deep sleep?
We go through, actually, we go through all of them every
night. We go through all of them. So the newborn. So did you read that new article in the New Yorker about dreaming? They said that it goes along with this. They said, does a baby dream in, like, let's say inside the womb, because is experience part of being able to dream? Do you have to have experience? So yeah, they're having some experience breathing and moving around the womb, but when you come out of the womb, you start having an experiences that are the content of the dreams that can become part of the dreams. So is the baby is experience essential to dreaming?
It is, but not necessarily from this incarnation.
It can that you mean the experience in the womb could be enough to dream.
A baby in utero is feeling everything that the mother feels.
Yeah.
Everything. They don't have the tools to assign meaning to it, but if mommy gets scared, the fetus is scared.
So then the baby could have a dream different than the mom, or is the baby
Easily.
easily?
The baby is going through a completely different set of experiences than the mom is. I mean, the baby is the victim. The mom's making choices. The baby's just getting the heat from it.
Well, do you think it sounds kooky, but you know about Frank Lloyd Wright's mom put pictures of buildings up when he was in the womb because she wanted him to become an architect. So was it her desires in her head going down into the womb, or did the pictures of the buildings go through the skin of the womb into his head?
That's a great question. And I'm going to give you the best answer I have for that one.
Yeah.
This one's a little bit hard to take. We are all innately psychic.
Yes, I like that.
We all know what essentially is going on with everybody in our field.
Yeah.
We choose not to acknowledge it because then we'd have to respond. And responding takes work and time and effort.
Well, again, you anticipate next question in a lot of ways, but I have to stick on that for a second.
Sure.
We are all innately psychic. Who enlightened you to that? Did you come up on your own, or did you study Jung, or some philosopher, psychologist sort of led you to believe that? You know, is that synchronicity and coincidence and all that? Yeah.
I read a book in 1971 called The Primal Scream.
Yeah.
By Arthur Janoff.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine turned me on to it, and I read it and I went, oh my God, we've got to do this. And he said, well, we can't do it because he's in California and we're in Boston. And it costs $5,000 up front before you can even become a patient of his. And I said, well, you know, I read the book, and he didn't know what he was doing when he discovered a primal. One of his patients rolled off the couch, started flopping around on the floor, and 15 minutes later said, oh my God, I just had the most amazing experience. And Janoff said, really? Tell me about that. And so I said to my friend, you know, he didn't have a book. We have his book. We're so far ahead of where he started. We can do this. And my friend said, you are fucking nuts.
So you mean
no, I really think we can do this.
So we are all innately psychic, sort of came through Janoff and Primal Scream for you.
It did. I got to tell you the other piece of this.
Okay.
I said, we got to go someplace where we can make noise, where nobody will interrupt us. So we went to Cape Cod in the wintertime, and we rented a little cottage. It was like $120 a month, as opposed to $1,500 a week in the summertime. And there were no other residents on the street, and it was a cottage that had just been built. We walked in the door. My friend said, I can't live here. This place is too cold. And I said, have you ever lived in a place that nobody's ever lived in before? And he went, no, I haven't. Every place I've lived, somebody lived in there. I said, so if we move into this place that nobody's ever lived, the only energy in this place will be our energy. Wouldn't you like to know what our energy is like and have our own signature? So he said, okay, I'll go for it. We'll do it. And so we did some primal therapy, and it had its effect. But I was supporting us on unemployment money, so I had to hitchhike from Wellfleet on Cape Cod to Boston, 100 miles once a week to get my unemployment money.
Yeah.
And so hitchhiking 100 miles each way in the wintertime between January and May is a little scary because you don't know how long it's going to take to get a ride. You don't know if the person that's going to pick you up is crazy or not.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of factors. After about a month of hitchhiking back and forth, I started getting messages about when cars were coming down the road, whether they were going to stop or not.
Right.
And pretty soon I was like 100% accurate. And then after about 2 months of doing that, I'd get in the car and I would know everything about the life of the person who was driving the car. And I'd start asking him questions about, well, how's your son doing at Cornell? And he'd go, I'm pulling over the car. You're getting out right now. And I went, well, this is too sharp a tool. I gotta dumb this one down a little bit.
Dumb it down. That was good. So, Alan, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Not much.
Yeah.
I think the only things that I worry about when I go to bed at night are tasks that I haven't completed during the day that have a deadline. So I would be thinking about those things.
McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound the poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might be able to learn to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So I ask you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
I don't think we do ignore them.
Yeah.
I think we sideline them until we have enough information to evaluate them.
Yeah.
And then we can choose to ignore them once we have some understanding about them.
Yeah.
But I think, I think we kind of innately say no to anything that's new to buy ourselves time to respond. I found myself doing that when I was a kid, and it came to me that I wasn't learning anything by saying no. So I decided that anything I didn't really know or wasn't familiar with, I would just say yes. And then at least I'd have an opportunity to learn what it was.
That's amazing, because the next question is, are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I'm not afraid of any ideas.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
This is going to sound a little strange, but I've been a therapist for 45 years. And so I've done a lot of trainings. I've been on the table lots of times and have had lots of opportunities to experience things that a lot of other people have not. I had a session facilitated. The facilitator said, just follow your body wherever it wants to go, let it go there. We'll support it. We'll move it into whatever position it needs to go to. So the short story is 15 minutes later, there were two therapists holding my ankles, standing on the massage table that we had started on. And my head was down at the bottom like the pendulum in a grandfather clock. And I was screaming and crying bloody murder.
Wow.
And buckets of tears were flowing out of me. And
Ooh.
suddenly I wasn't in my body anymore. I was in the corner of the room up by the ceiling. And I'm watching this thing happening. I'm watching my body being held by the ankles by these two people. And then the scene changed, and it wasn't me. It was me 2 days old being held upside down by a nurse. I could see her white cap. She was sitting in a rocking chair in front of a a fireplace, and she's rocking me, and I'm screaming bloody murder just like I was in the therapy session. And I popped out of my body there too and was watching that happen. That's where I got the image of the nurse. I could see me and the baby. And so a few years later, I was telling my sister about that. And she said, wow, that's really strange. And she said, hang on a second. And she goes to a suitcase. She opens the suitcase. She starts flipping through a bunch of pictures. And she pulls out a photograph of the nurse holding me upside down, day 2 of my life.
Wow. Why is the nurse holding you upside down? Is that a procedure to do something?
I was colicky, and she had done I'm sure she had done everything else to try and calm me down. But the reason that I was crying, and this is full circle here. I was born in 1948. Doctor said nursing is a bad thing. You don't have the right chemistry. Your kid should be on formula. That's a scientific way to do it. So you're not going to nurse. My birth was difficult, and a nurse came home from the hospital with us, and my mom went upstairs into a bedroom, and the nurse took care of her there for about 2 weeks. And I was downstairs in a pen or a crib, and the nurse was taking care of me down there. All I wanted to do was nurse.
Right.
It was not an option. So I cried. So at the end of the crying part of my session, they lowered me down onto the floor, my assistants, and they said, so what do you want to do? And I said, I want you to roll me over onto my tummy.
Yeah.
And they went, okay. And they rolled me over onto my tummy. And I laid there for a couple of minutes, and I went, I can feel the earth.
Yeah.
I've never felt the earth before. And I rolled over onto my back, and I had my eyes closed, and I went, I'm feeling things that I didn't know I had the capacity to feel. And one of the therapists made a little knuckle with her finger and put it near my mouth, and I latched onto it.
Yeah.
And nursed for like 5 minutes.
That is amazing.
It was the most sad. It was the most. I was 45 years old when that happened. It was the most satisfying moment of my life to that moment.
Amazing.
And what I realized was I haven't been in my body since I was born.
Yeah.
I've been sort of hanging out next to it because it's not safe to be in the body because it hurts to be in there.
Wow. It's your mama heartbeat. The mother's breast feeding you mother's milk. They deprived you of that. That is so freaky.
And that was the rule, not the exception. We have a whole generation of kids who didn't learn to feel because they weren't given the opportunity to.
Yeah. That is freaky breastfeeding. Oh my God, Alan, you really are articulate too. That's what's good. I feel like you're really, so this thing about,
I'm thrilled about having these questions to answer. This is great.
No, this is good because the question was about why do we ignore these hidden psychic effects? And you said, well, we sideline them and then maybe we choose to ignore them. And it was in regards to the artist. So this is good because the next question is back to that theme.
Okay.
Do artists have moral obligation? Especially knowing what conceptual art is.
I'm going to throw that back to you as a question.
Yeah.
Do humans have a moral obligation?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do. They shift it and say we all have moral obligation.
I think none of us do.
Oh wow, do humans have more moral obligation? And you say no. Yeah. I see.
Aleister Crowley said, "Do what thou wilt shall be the entirety of the law."
That's it, and then it gets down to, well, what do you mean by moral, and what do you mean by obligation?
Yeah, words are very dicey.
Yeah. So, how did I skip that? That was weird. I sort of went out of okay. Now back to memory. Whoa, I really fell out of place there. Forgive me. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
I think it's a curse when it impedes our ability to move freely and make choices. I think it's a great tool when you have to repeat a complex task that you've
Yeah.
already done before.
Yeah.
It's a curse when it attaches you to things that scared you and it makes you shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a therapist. I deal with people's memories, their horrific memories all the time.
Yeah.
And, for a long time, I thought, well, my job is to um, have them re experience those things, contextualize them, and then move on from them. But I came to understand really kind of late in my career as a therapist that it wasn't necessary to re traumatize people in order to resolve that stuff. It was way better to just teach them tools for calming themselves and the inner kids that were the ones that were really scared, the ones that were traumatized, that were having those overwhelms. So I don't know. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure.
That answers the question beautifully. Again, you're a wordsmith. You're really communicating well and concisely and articulately. I appreciate this, Alan. So tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
I was terrified of my dad because to me as a baby, he was what a 10-foot grizzly bear would be like to an adult human,
Yeah.
not a level playing field. And when he got angry, it was terrifying. The the people that inspired me as a kid were my aunts and uncles
Yeah.
because they actually showed up without an agenda and shared their lives with me as if I was like a real person,
Yeah.
not somebody who had to be protected and guarded. And um, they taught me how to share, and they shared amazing things with me, and opened me up in ways that I was terrified of my dad when I was a kid. Unfortunately, when you and I were kids, the paradigm was spare the rod and spoil the child,
Yeah.
and they did not spare the rod. So I think it's a huge thing in my universe, in my world, that trust is so primal and so essential to growing.
Yeah.
And when an adult who you're dependent upon for survival turns on you and raises a hand aggressively against you, you can never trust them again.
Yeah.
And it poisoned my relationship with both my parents because I couldn't trust them. I couldn't have my heart open in their presence. They
Yeah.
caused me pain.
Wow. All right, Alan. Now, outside your immediate family, same question.
That's so many great role models. Um, Lenny Bruce,
Wow. What did you get from Lenny? And what age are you?
uh, 18, 19.
And you're listening to vinyl or live?
Vinyl. Yeah, I have all of Lenny Bruce's albums.
Wow. What'd you
Yeah,
get?
I got them when I was a freshman in college.
What did you get from Lenny? That's amazing.
Um, To is a preposition. Come is a verb. To come, the verb intransitive. To come. He said, I've heard these words my entire life, and everybody thinks they're evil. To come. They're just words. He taught me the value of language and how manipulative it can be and how easily co-opted it can be. He said this is so great. I love this about him. He said, I got arrested for for being obscene, and I'd go into court and some district attorney is doing my routine to the jury. And I'm saying to the judge, he's not a comedian. He can't do my material. It's completely out of context, Your Honor. It's completely out of context. You can't judge me on that. So he was absolutely a hero of mine. Henry Miller. The
Henry, wait, let's before you go into Henry, let's go on Lenny for a second.
Okay, sure.
Because, to swear to tell the truth, the best Lenny doc is on YouTube right now, free. And for
Really?
years, oh, dude, if you have never seen it, for years it was hard to see. It never really got a good distribution. And somebody just finally put it. Robert Whitey made docs on everybody, including the Marx Brothers. And his doc on Lenny is amazing. And his new doc on Kurt Vonnegut is 40 years in the making, just came out. But
What's the name of that?
I don't know. Just look up Robert Whitey, Weide, Kurt Vonnegut. But his doc on Lenny, I've shown him several times, and I was so happy. All of a sudden, it just popped up on YouTube free, because
I love Lenny.
this is essential. But I want to tell you something I heard,
Sure.
having studied Lenny many years after. It wasn't like I was your age when I heard. I mean, I heard of maybe. Yeah, I guess I was showing Thank You, Mask Man in my mid in my mid-20s. I'm showing Thank You, Mask Man. But
Okay.
that's, I wish I knew. And then, we got a different version of Lenny with Dustin Hoffman. And then there are two Lenny docs pre To Swear to Tell the Truth that I showed all the time too. So there was that experience. But years later, I learned from these two guys who wrote kind of the best book on Lenny that the two biggest influences for Lenny Bruce was Lord Buckley in strip clubs.
I
And
love Lord Buckley. I have
I
all
know,
of his albums.
just to think, Lord Buckley and strip clubs, where you take those two things, that's alchemy. I'm going to take Lord Buckley and strip clubs and I'm going to invent a new thing.
Hipsters, flippers, and finger popping daddies. Knock me your lobes.
Okay, Lenny, you really did good. Now let's just do Alan or Henry Miller too. What'd you get from Henry?
I read Sexist when I was a teenager because my sister had it, and I just underlined all the hot parts in it. And then when I got to college, I found the book again in a campus bookstore. I was an English major then, and so I read it again, and I went, "Oh my God, this is autobiographical." And
Wow.
he is writing about the most disgusting human being that has ever been articulated in print.
Yeah.
And I got to the end of Sexist and I went, that's intense. And I read the next, it's a trilogy, Sexist, Plexus, and Nexus. And about halfway through Plexus, I realized that Henry Miller was writing his own life story.
Yeah.
As the most disgusting human being imaginable. And I thought, to be able to even see yourself through that lens and own who you've been,
Yeah.
how evil, how obnoxious, how arrogant, how despicable you've been, and then to write a profile of yourself
Yeah.
in print and give it to the world and tell everybody what a despicable human being you used to be. I found that just amazing.
But is that his, in your looking back, was that his way of therapy, like self-therapy?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's Mike Kelly says, art is making your problems everybody else's problem.
That's a great quote. I love that.
So, hey, I gotta tell you one Henry anecdote too.
Sure.
You know, he's hanging out in, Big Sur, and he writes all these sexy books, and women are attracted to him. So he's sort of getting laid all the time, and his buddy, what's his buddy's name? Emil or something. His partner in crime, and all they had to do was have this place in Big Sur, and the women would flock to it. So they're getting laid all the time. Henry dies, and his partner goes, "How am I going to keep getting laid?" So he put a sign at the end of the driveway, Henry Miller Library.
I've
And
been there.
yeah, and it worked for 10 years. He got laid. And then Magnus bought it, and he holds it up as a kind of museum and as a bookstore. But
Oh, that's great.
the other guy was just getting laid off the name.
We are a clever species. So I have a couple of other people that I wanted to mention.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just in passing.
Yeah.
Tim Leary.
Oh yeah, wow, very good.
As much a hero as
Did you
Lenny or
meet
Henry Miller.
Tim? Did you hang or meet Tim?
I met him once.
Yeah.
I got to see him at a performance in Boston, and I got to talk to him for a little bit afterwards.
Yeah.
And I said, Tim, your books have all disappeared from all the libraries and all the bookstores. And he said, no. I said, yeah. I said, try and find one of your books anywhere. And he looked at me and he kind of smiled. With this, Timothy, he said, it's an intelligence test. You go find them.
But
of course I did. I did.
Yeah, the great Tim Leary, the cops bust him and they're giving him a psychological test, and he goes,
right, and he wrote,
dude, I wrote this test. But what did you get from Tim? Because you're summarizing this so well. Each person, what you got from them. What do you think you got from him?
Joy.
Wow. That is good.
He went through hell. He opened his heart and his soul. He spoke his truth. He knew he was going to get creamed for it.
Yeah.
He did get creamed for it. It never even slowed him down.
Yeah.
I mean, he escaped from Folsom Prison on a telephone wire at 60 years old. I remember reading that portion of his book. I think, Reflections of a Hope Fiend or something.
Yeah,
and he just never let the evil people get to him. That was never going to happen. And I don't think I've ever seen a picture of him that he wasn't smiling.
Yeah. Dude, did you see it came out about a year or two ago, the documentary on Tim Leary's wife by Earl Morris?
No, I did not.
Dude, that is a must. That is such a great film in the graphics and everything.
You said Earl Morris, E-A-R-L?
Yeah, Earl Morris. He's a great documentarian. I don't know. Just look up Tim Leary's wife documentary.
Okay.
It's really good. Yeah, it is very, very good. Yeah, because for you to say Joy, he's so misunderstood. People go, Tim Leary, blah blah blah. He says, dude, he wrote 33 books. Nobody knows he wrote 33 books. Oh, but he gets chalked off as a hindrance to moving.
You know why that happened, right?
Why? Tell me.
Because the Department of Defense wanted to use LSD as a mind control drug.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so when he was at Harvard, he was publishing, you know, this blows my mind. It blows my mind that this is not his legacy. He taught at Harvard. He went into the Concord State Prison and did acid sessions with 10 maximum security prisoners
Yeah.
in the same room, and then followed the lives of those prisoners for the next 20 years. And the
Wow.
recidivism rate for maximum offenders is about 80% of those people end up back in jail if they ever get out.
Wow.
And the guys that were in his acid group, the recidivism rate was 20%.
Amazing.
And if that's not a model for how to treat people who have, fallen on the wayside and
Yeah.
don't know how to pay attention to the rules anymore, to ignore that, that's one of those things you asked earlier about ignoring things, and that's about as big a thing to ignore as I can imagine.
Yeah. And now, really, what's happening? Michael Pollan is mainstreamed.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
quite amazing. Okay, now number 4, Lenny, Henry, Tim. I'm dying to hear who number 4 is going to be.
John Lennon.
Wow. And what'd you get from John?
He spoke the truth.
Wow.
He always told the truth.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second. Louis Buñuel says, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. Most people freak out. They go, I love that. And then one guy goes, no, that's bullshit. Because if I'm going to seek something, it's because I want to find it. So I morphed it into the question. The cliche is the journey is more important than the destination. Why do we have to seek or name a destination if the journey is more important?
I completely agree. Lama Anagarika Govinda, a book by him came into my possession. I'll tell you that story another time. But on page 19 of the book, it says, the meaning of life is, and I went, oh, good, I can't wait for this. The meaning of life is in the journey. The destination is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Omniscience in its finest form would be a complete waste of everybody's time and effort.
Yeah.
Why would anybody want to read a book if they already knew how it ended? It's all about the journey.
Yeah.
And this may be just me, but I think that the Beatles were the second coming of the Messiah.
Yeah.
And they came in 4 different sizes, shapes, and colors so that everybody would have one to relate to. And their message was, open your hearts and love.
Yeah.
I mean, there were lots of other messages also, but that was the one constant in what they brought to the table.
Yeah.
The only other person, remember I said Arthur Janoff and Primal Therapy?
Yeah.
John Lennon and Yoko Ono went through Primal Therapy around the same time I was reading Janoff's book.
Yeah.
And he left the Beatles and he wrote 2 albums, Plastic Ono Band and Imagine. And they were all about what he learned doing Primal Therapy.
Wow, that's right. Yeah.
And those albums they're diamonds. Every song on those albums is mind-opening and heart-opening.
Yeah. Well, that's
my John Lennon thing.
Well, there's one anecdote I got to add about John Lennon, because having studied Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce for 28 years, the $100 Beatles book has a quote by John Lennon saying, when I read Finnegan's Wake, it felt like I was talking with a friend. And in Holden Caulfield's words from Catcher in the Rye, he goes, when you're reading a book it feels like you're talking to a friend. And we know which book was in the back pocket of Jeff. That is a weird coincidence, but it's probably just a coincidence. Who knows? Complex clairvoyance, coincidence, who knows?
I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe in accidents. So
Yeah.
I'm sure they happen, but I don't have
Yeah.
to believe in them. I'm not required.
Yep. Alan, did your parents raise you a particular religion?
I was raised in a Jewish household, and while I was studying for my bar mitzvah, I had baseball practice, so I skipped all my Hebrew school classes. And it came time for my bar mitzvah. The rabbi and the head of the school pulled my parents in and me into a meeting and said, "Listen, there's no way he can read from the Torah. So we'll make a deal with you. If you agree to keep him in religious training through confirmation, which is another 4 years, we will give him the translations in phonetics of the words."
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I'm 13 years old, and I'm watching a rabbi and a religious school person sticking up my parents with a gun.
Great word usage, sticking up.
And that was the last time I was in a temple until one of my friends got married.
Wow. Do you pray?
I breathe with intention,
Yeah. Wow.
and I use affirmations to help manifest things.
Yeah.
That's kind of like prayer, I guess.
If
I
God,
don't
yeah,
pray. I pray to Source,
yeah,
and I believe I'm part of Source. So
yeah. If God exists, what would you like God to tell you after you die?
nice job, Alan.
Yeah. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think what's good today is evil tomorrow. What's evil today is good tomorrow. What's right today is wrong tomorrow. So even the word evil is so full of subjectivity that
Yeah.
um, um, I, I think people are innately good and loving, and they get turned because there's a great line from Kung Fu, the TV series.
Yeah.
Um, to repress a need is to give it force beyond endurance. So we've taken the prime directive for humans, which is to procreate, and demonized and illegalized it.
Yeah.
So my quote that I want to have on my gravestone is, "Here's what humans do best. We paint ourselves into ever smaller corners."
That
Actually,
is,
there is a smushed up version of that. That's actually the title of the book that I'm writing.
yeah.
You said bring a copy of the cover of the book.
Oh, please.
Oh, can I show it to you?
Please.
Okay, here it is.
There's no upside to being right. That's good. This has come out, or it's due to come
No,
out?
it's I'm working on it's being edited right now.
Right.
The subtitle, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it says "Healing and Integrating Our Inner Wounded Selves."
Beautiful.
Because we all have inner kids.
Yeah.
They all went into hiding when it got too scary for them.
Yeah.
And they'll
Okay.
only come out of hiding when somebody kind and friendly shows up for them and says, "It's okay, it's safe now." I tell my clients, I teach all of my clients how to breathe with intention. If
Yeah.
you take, I say, so I'm going to do this for you right now, Jerry. You ready? So
Yep.
you are an age, whatever age you are, I don't really care. So if you close your eyes just for a second and take a slow, deep breath in and just focus on the idea that you have survived everything so far.
Yes.
100% success rate at surviving. And by breathing that realization and that validation in, it sends a message to all the places in you that have ever been scared. It's okay. We made it.
Yes. I love that.
Me too. I
I'm
do
gonna
that.
do
I
that.
do that myself every day.
I'm gonna do that more often. That is really beautiful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Alan. There's two things that you evoked with this painting yourself into the corners too. Emo Phillips, the comedian,
Love them.
this bully says, "I'm gonna wipe your face. I'm gonna wipe the floor with your face." And Emo goes, "You're not, no, I'm gonna mop the floor with your face." He goes, "You're not gonna get in the corners very well."
Emo is really brilliant. He's actually one of my favorite comedians.
Yeah,
He does a routine about religion, and he
yeah.
said, "I'm on the bridge on the Golden Gate Bridge, and there's a man there, and he's going to jump." And I say, "Don't you believe in God?" And he goes, "Of course I do." He said, "Well, what religion are you?" He said, "I'm a Christian." And he goes, "Well, Baptist or a Catholic?" He said, "Well, I'm a Catholic." And he said, "Well, a Catholic of the
Yeah.
Reformation or a Catholic of the blah blah blah?" And he goes, "I'm a Catholic of the Reformation." He goes, "Oh, so am I." And he goes, "Well, is it the Reformation of 1852 or the Reformation of 1856?" And he goes, "The Reformation of 1856." So I pushed him. I said, "Die, heretic."
Dire. Emo goes, "Where were you when Kennedy got shot?" He goes, "I have no alibi."
Jerry, we are absolutely kindred spirits.
Oh yeah, this is
You and I will laugh at the same jokes for the rest of time.
oh dude, I love it. And so I loved it earlier when you said inner childs. So I've
Sure.
never heard it being plural. I know the woman who invented inner child, she's a KPFK Pacifica radio person in Los Angeles, and she was ironing one day and it came to her and she sort of propagated it through her book or whatever. And a friend of mine had an accident skiing and they put her on some heavy drug, and the during her healing on this healing drug, she had a heavy dream and she got in touch with her inner child and realized her mother didn't want her to be born. And so she got freaked and she dreamt this, probably
Yeah,
the
I gotcha.
the accident and the drugs might have brought it out. And she went to her mom and says, "Mom, I had this dream." And her mom says, "Well, I have to reveal it. It's true."
It
So
is true. Remember
yeah,
me getting hung upside down?
yeah. So she tapped into her inner child. But then what? Have you uniquely made it plural, or has it been made plural in the big picture of inner child?
I don't know what the big picture is. I only know my picture.
Yeah,
So I'll give you 1 minute on inner children.
yeah,
Um, Inner children are the result of sustained overwhelm. So those sustained overwhelms happen at some very specific times in our evolution as humans. And I'm just going to give you 4 templates that are the 4
yeah,
that I think that we all have. There's a 5-year-old who has to go to school for the first time. They've just figured out how home works. They know where to hide when the voices get angry. They know where the refrigerator is. They've got home wired, and then they get put into this new environment where they don't know anybody. They don't know who to trust or how to function, and it's terrifying. And it's terrifying for weeks. And so they still have to function. They got to get up and go. So what the mind does is it creates a new persona that's
Yeah.
willing to take the risk of showing up at school and dealing with the new environment,
Yeah.
leaving behind the child that's terrified. And when the child that's terrified goes, no, this is too scary, the new persona goes, just be quiet, I'll handle this.
Yes.
That's the nice version of it. The not nice version is just shut the fuck up, I got to deal with this. Okay. And
Yeah.
then that kid goes into hiding and starts building walls so it doesn't have to perceive the fear anymore. That's
Yeah.
inner child number one. Inner child number two is 11 or 12 or 13 years old going through puberty.
Yeah.
And suddenly the world has changed wholesale, and whatever it was they thought was real isn't anymore. What's real now is I need to touch and be touched,
Yeah.
which is forbidden, verboten. And we learned don't look at it, don't touch it, and absolutely don't look at or touch anybody else's, not by hearing those words, but by watching our parents' eyes avert from other people's privates. Okay?
Wow.
Completely before we're even verbal, we know that.
That's
So we go through puberty and we're
Yeah.
feeling all of these things and we can't. It's
Yeah.
a classic double bind. I have to and I can't. So the mind says, okay, we got to continue to function. We got to put clothes on and go back to school. We got to eat lunch. So I'm going to create a new persona who can repress that feeling and move through what we need to move through. And so what we leave behind is a 12-year-old pubescent inner child. And like I said, Kung Fu, to repress a need gives it strength beyond endurance. So that 12-year-old, this is going to blow your mind, that 12-year-old was our president for 4 years.
I hate to laugh. I know you're right.
No. There's no adult home there at all. There's
Yeah.
a 12-year-old who must make dad proud, who must get laid, and who must not feel guilt about anything.
Yeah.
That's the repressed 12-year-old inner child. And
Yeah.
he never got any further than that. And
Yeah.
so when he said, I grab women by their pussy and I kiss them, he gave permission to all those repressed 12-year-olds, males and females, and said, it's okay to have sex now. And they
Yeah.
all went, you're the Messiah. We're going with you. 70 million people,
Yeah.
12 years old, all of them. So that's inner child number two.
Oh, yeah.
16,
Wow.
17,
Really?
18 years old, you fall in love for the first time.
Yeah.
The beloved is the only thing that exists in your universe. You can't function, you can't eat, you can't study, you can't concentrate. You are completely overwhelmed by this feeling, and it's sustained and then followed by heartbreak, which is even more sustained and more painful, and nobody can cope with that. So we leave the 17-year-old behind also in order to move on. So now we got a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 17-year-old, and you get to go to college, or you become of age to like have a job or whatever. And suddenly all the voices who have been telling you what you have to do for your entire life go silent.
Yeah.
That happened to me when I graduated from college and got drafted into the Army. And suddenly I had to grow up. Did I have the tools to do that? No. I got to wait for 6 weeks while the Army shrink had an appointment for me to determine whether I was crazy enough to go to Vietnam. So now I have a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 22-year-old adult inner child who is ashamed of not going to Vietnam.
Wow.
And I couldn't function. I couldn't cope. So in the writing of my book, I had 6 months, about a few months ago, I had about 6 months, I couldn't write the book at all, because I had written stories about the 5-year-old inner child and the 12-year-old inner child and the 2-day-old inner child. I got woken up at 4:45 in the morning one morning, and the 17-year-old goes, I'm ready to talk. Let's go to the computer.
Wow.
I sit down at the computer. I'm not even awake. And out comes 1,500 words about falling in love with Ellie and how beautiful she was and how Ellie is everything and nothing else matters. And then how I blew it, and Ellie ended up, going off with somebody else. And I thought, well, so now the book is done, right? About a month later, I'm doing a group therapy session with a bunch of people. We put one person on the table, and four of us put our hands on them and give them permission to go wherever they need to go to resolve whatever they need to resolve. And they said, so what are you working on? What do you need to do? And I said, well, I think there's a 22-year-old who's really not willing to be outed at this point. and I could really use some help. Acknowledge, the template in my book is, how do you deal with an inner child? You acknowledge them, you accept them,
Yeah.
remove all the judgments, forgive them for everything. You appreciate them, because without them, you would not even be in existence. You owe them everything. So you acknowledge them, you accept them, you appreciate them. Appreciation is a beautiful sunset, a beautiful piece of music, a painting, something that is overwhelming to you and forces your heart to open. That's what the feeling of appreciation is. It's, oh, this is bigger than me.
Wow.
I've got to pay attention to this. And appreciation physically makes your heart soften and open. And it's the precursor to being able to feel love.
Yeah.
So you acknowledge them, you accept them, you appreciate them, and you love those inner kids. And then you release what attached them to being afraid. And then you reintegrate the pieces. And that's healing, without judgment, without blame, without shame, without guilt.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I'm writing the book.
Alan, that was so well.
To be able to know how to do this.
Alan, that was so well put. It really is clear, and it brought up two things. One is a joke that you have to hear is so appropriate.
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, did you get drafted and went in, or did they check you out?
I flunked out of college when I was a freshman. In the lottery, my number was 14. I was definitely going. So within a few days of flunking out of college, I got drafted. I went for a physical. In order to get out of it, I had to go to a junior college for a semester and get my deferment back, my college deferment back. And I did. So when I went back to college, I went, well, that's not happening again. So I took courses in psychology, and I took courses in abnormal psychology, and so I knew what depression and what multiple personality looked like, and what bipolar looked like. And so when I graduated, just before I graduated, I went to the school shrink, and I said, I'm going to graduate. They're going to draft me, and they're going to send me to Vietnam. I can't go. I can't touch a gun or do what they want me to do. What am I supposed to do? And he said, you're graduating. I'm done here. I think you should go see somebody on the outside. And I said, would you please put that in writing for me? And he went, sure. And he wrote me a note that says, Alan should see somebody on the outside. So I got outside. I went to the Beth Israel Hospital. I said, I'm dying here. They're going to send me to fucking Vietnam, and I can't go. It's that or can't. It's Canada for me. And the shrink said, you're right. It's just exactly that bad. And I said, so what are we going to do? And he said, well, I'll write you a note too. And the note will say, he's not mentally or emotionally prepared to be able to do this. So that went in my folder. So I went for the physical. I passed the physical. And they said, so you got to come back for an evaluation. And I said, well, so now? And I said, no, in 6 weeks. And I said, in 6 weeks? What am I supposed to do in the meantime? They said, you are to not leave the city or the state because we own you until you have that eval with the shrink. So I went, okay. And I was staying with my parents in my bedroom. I went to bookstores and I collected books. Being and Nothingness by Sartre, Narcissus and Goldman by Hesse. Uh, I can't even remember what all of them were.
Right.
The Carlos Castaneda book. All of
Right.
these things were talking about multiple personalities and stuff. And so 6 weeks later, I go to the Army base and I'm sitting on the Group W bench, that Arlo Guthrie talked about. And there's 4 other guys there, and 2 of them, one goes in, he's in there for 45 minutes. He comes out, he goes, that went bad. The next guy goes in, he's in there for 45 minutes. He comes out, he goes, well, that was bad. I go in, I don't look at the shrink. I sit in the chair, I start rocking back and forth. And he goes, so why did you ask for this interview? And I said, I didn't ask for this. And he said, well, it says on your file that you attempted suicide. Can you tell me a little about that? And I said, well, I went to see the school shrink, and I saw him for 3 sessions. And at the end of the 3rd session, he said, you're as sane as anybody I ever met. There's nothing I can do to help you. And he sent me away. And I was so depressed and so unhappy that I drove my car off the road trying to kill myself. And he said, and so what happened? I said, I totaled the car and I came out without a scratch. I'm sitting, I'm rocking, and I'm laughing about the suicide attempt. And he goes, oh, okay. And you did this another time? And I said, yeah, I just fucked the other one up too. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I was doing acid with a bunch of my friends, and we were all having a pretty good time, but they decided they wanted to go for a walk, and I wasn't up for it, so they left. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and then I'm feeling the entire universe, and my place in the universe is not to carry a gun and go shoot people I don't know, and I can't do it. And so the only way I can think of to get out of it was I closed all the windows and I turned the gas on in the apartment, and I fell asleep. And he said, and so what happened? I said, well, my friends came back and they opened the windows and they smacked me around, and I fucked that up too. And he went, oh. And what caused that to happen? I said, well, I went to see the shrink just before I graduated. And he said, I can't help you. You're going to have to see somebody on the outside. And I went, okay. And I went and saw somebody on the outside, and now I'm here. And he said, okay, I don't think I have any more questions. And I went, okay. And I got up and I left, and I have not made eye contact with this person yet. I haven't even looked at him.
Yeah.
I walked to the door and I go, so when am I going to find out about something like this? And he said, well, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks to process the paperwork and stuff. And I stopped him and I turned and I looked him right in the eye and I went and shook my head, and I started to walk out the door. And he said behind me, don't worry about it. You're not going anywhere.
Wow. That's brilliant. I don't know
if it was brilliant. I just said
it was
public,
brilliant.
right?
It's a combination, Alan. But I got a conscientious objector status. I actually got trained by this guy how to convince 4 older men that I was raised not to shoot. And he trained me good enough. And they says, okay, I was raised not to shoot. And they go, okay, you got to. So here's the Dave Van Ronk, the great folk singer's opening joke in his book. The guy goes in the army and he's definitely nuts. And all his fellow army dudes go, you've got to be analyzed because you're fucking nuts. So he goes, but wait, I've left out the first part. Sorry. I always tell this joke bad. The guy goes around in the army base constantly doing this. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Yeah, everybody drives everybody crazy. That's not it. So they go, you got to go to the shrink. So he goes to the army shrink. The shrink analyzes him and says, you're fucking nuts. Here's your discharge papers, and hands it to him. And he goes, That's it.
That's it. So
That's it.
I got it. I got
Yeah.
it. So can I close the circle on this little piece of story?
Oh,
So
yeah,
that
definitely.
happened when I was 22. Remember I told you about the
Yeah.
22-year-old
Yeah.
adult inner child? So 50 years later, I did this thing with my therapist friends. They said, what can we do to help you? I said, I need you to play me a song.
Yeah.
You have songs on your phones? And they went, yeah. And I said, I need you to play me a Billy Joel song. And they said, what song? I said, Good Night, Saigon.
Yeah.
And the chorus of the song is, we said we'd all go down together. Yes, we would all go down together. And I didn't. And I felt shame and guilt for not doing that. And I had friends that did go and got killed, others that went and got lost, and others that came back basket cases.
Yeah.
And so for 50 years, I felt terrible shame
Yeah.
and guilt about it, but I buried it all, just
Yeah.
the way we bury everything that hurts.
Yeah.
And after the session happened that my friends facilitated, I went out to eat with two of the therapists, and we went to a Mexican restaurant. And I took one bite of a corner of a taco chip with a little salsa on it, and I turned green. And I said, I can't stay here. And I
Yeah.
went home and emptied my stomach for 3 hours, and then emptied the rest of my intestines over the next 12 hours. First, it came out this end, and then it came out the other end.
Yeah.
And if you ever had a colonoscopy, you had to empty your gastrointestinal system, and that happened because I stopped holding on to the shame from 50 years earlier.
Wow, you had the mental psychological connect with the physical to
Exactly. I wasn't
release
sure that's what was happening,
to
but
release it. You released it. Wow.
and I had been repressing that for 50 years, Jerry.
Wow.
And I don't know what the toll is or how much psychic energy it takes to keep all of those traumas, the 5-year-old, the 17-year-old, the 12-year-old, the 22-year-old. How much energy can it take to repress all of that, all of those feelings?
Yeah.
So having done that, I finished the book. I mean, I have editing to do. And about a month later, I ran into one of the therapists that I was doing that thing with. I fell in love with.
Oh, wow.
And we were both at the end of long-term, not healthy relationships. And she freed me in a way that I never imagined. I didn't even know that I was broken until suddenly I was healed. And she was the facilitator for that. And everything in my sensorium opened. It was like it was like I felt like I'm an intelligent guy, but I had been blind for 50 years
Wow.
and just going through the motions of, this is what people are supposed to do. This is what they're supposed to think. This is what's supposed to happen without feeling any of it. And
Wow.
in a whoosh, all suddenly I was Lenny Bruce and Timothy Leary and Henry Miller. I'm free.
This is amazing.
It,
And
it,
this
it,
is the one that I met at the Storm Norman and Susie concert.
yes, exactly.
What's her name?
Susan.
Susan. That's amazing. That was so well put. I'm free. And it's a major topic that I often go into is freedom. But I wanted to go back, Alan, if we could, because I
Sure.
liked how you did this acknowledge, accept, and appreciate. Because my sister's a social worker and a therapist, and she taught me many years ago one of the keys to a successful relationship is how you deal with what you don't like about the other person. It's the how.
Right.
And I like that because some people yell or some people repress it or whatever. There's a million ways, but
Sure.
it's the how is the key. And I would say, well, it's sort of like sweet tolerance. And then someone said, no, it's sweet tolerance is implying what they're doing is wrong or bad.
That's correct.
And then, no, it's adapting. And it's like, nope, it's not adapting because again, you're implying that what they're doing is bad or wrong.
That's right.
So it's accepting is what finally a friend said. No, it's really what you're doing is how you deal with it is by accepting it. So I like acknowledge and accept, but then you added appreciating. And then you added,
Loving, releasing, and reintegrating.
releasing, loving, release. Yeah, I got those. Loving, release, and reintegrating. 6 steps. Yes.
Because we lose ourselves when we go into hiding.
Yeah.
And put up those walls and create a new persona.
Right. But my question is, it's a pick and choose world. And, if the person's stabbing you with the knife and you want to have a successful, or say verbally abusing you, you want to have a successful relationship with them. Okay, you acknowledge that, you accept it. You don't want to appreciate. I mean, this is the difference between family and friends.
Right.
In
We're
a
talking about
family,
the difference between inner children and your partner. So, and those
Yeah.
are two completely different situations.
that's your inner child and someone outside your inner child. I see what you're saying.
I have a tool for the relationship part.
Okay, so yeah, that was the main thing is what do you do if it's a pick and choose world? It's actually a question that we're going to get to, but tell me the tool. That would be good.
I offer a deal to
Yeah.
everybody who I think might become a friend.
Yeah.
And the deal is this. I'm going to assume you are my friend and my ally.
Yeah.
And you would not intentionally do or say anything to offend me.
Yeah.
So if I hear something offensive or
Yeah.
I see something offensive, I'm going to duck.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to let it hit me. I'm going to assume it's not about me and let it go.
Yeah.
And if you hear or feel that I have said or done something that's offensive to you, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. I'm going to ask you to duck and not assume that it means anything about you.
Yeah.
Because I'm your friend and I love you. It's not about you. I can say weird, hurtful things as easily as the next person.
Yeah.
But almost anything. Well, my first marriage became abusive,
Yeah.
and I talk about that a lot. I talk about it some in the book also. She taught me how to duck because she was throwing things at me all the time.
You
And
mean literally?
literally and figuratively. And I came to assume that what she was throwing was not about me at all.
Yeah.
At one point, we got to actually physical blows, and I saw this look on her face, and the look on her face was, yeah, you say you're a hippie and you're all about love, but you're about to smack me out. I got you now. And I went, ah! And I realized she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to her father, who had abused her.
Oh.
And I was the role of dad. This incarnation will be played by Alan.
Wow.
We spent 20 years together, where I kept ducking the her anger and her pissed offness at her father. I kept getting all those things, and
Right.
it took me a long time to learn how to duck.
Yeah.
Because I kept responding and going, no, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, it was almost Alan. I was going to say so often it's like You say you're a hippie and you want love, and actually the finger is pointed at
That's right.
herself. That's often the case. Like, you're stingy. Well, no, I'm stingy, but I can't admit it, so I want to put it on you.
That's right.
Yeah.
We all judge. I think all judgment is projection.
Project.
I think all judgment is self-judgment projected.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't judge ourselves for something, we
Yeah.
didn't know we'd already felt that way or articulated that, then we'd have no issue with it at all. Why would we even have an issue with it? People
Yeah.
say, I'm afraid of the unknown. No, nobody's afraid of the unknown. If it's unknown, why would you be afraid? We're
Yeah.
only afraid of what we know is hurtful.
Exactly.
So fear of the unknown is a non sequitur.
That's a real truism. We're afraid of what is known.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my antidote for relationships is, I said earlier in our talk that I think happiness is a choice
Yeah.
that we make, and I think acting from a place of love is also a choice.
Yeah.
So the deal I make with Susan, and actually the deal I made with my second wife, was everything that I do here, I'm doing as an act of love. This is not a transaction. You did the dishes, so I'll take the trash out. We're not negotiating a deal here. I'm going to do everything that I do in this relationship as an act of love
Yeah.
because that's the way I want to feel, not
Yeah.
to please you. I'm doing it to please me. We all think that if we're good enough and work hard enough that somebody will love us. And that's a trick that the mind plays, which is the biggest lie there is. Being loved is dangerous because it can be withheld or withdrawn at any moment.
Yeah.
The reason that we incarnate is because we have an opportunity to feel love and to express it. That's the only thing that makes all this pain worthwhile. It's the only
Yeah.
thing that makes incarnating worthwhile.
Yeah.
So I don't care whether you like me or love me. I'm going to love you anyway.
I mean,
Susan and I were hugging in a supermarket the other day, and this lady looks at us. She's 69, I'm 75. This lady's looking at us, these two old people hugging in the supermarket. She's going, "Oh my God, that's wonderful." And I said to this lady, "Would you like a hug?" And she said, "Oh, yes, that would be wonderful." And so I gave her a hug, and it was a beautiful hug. And I was completely from a place of love. And then Susan said, "Would you like a hug from me too?" And the lady said, "Oh my God, that would be amazing." We're
oh,
standing in the aisle of the supermarket and we're hugging strangers.
that
And
is
I'm going,
really
does life get any better than this?
no, that's the epitome. That's it. You get to heaven and you get to peek in St. Pete's there and you look in and everybody's hugging each other and you go, "You have hugging in heaven?" And St. Pete goes, "That's all we got."
That's right.
That
Right.
and it works with hell too. You get to hell and the devil's standing there and people are hugging and they go, "You got hugging in hell?" And they go, "That's all we got."
Are you familiar with Michael Newton at all?
No, tell me.
He wrote a book called Journey of Souls,
Yeah.
and he was a psychotherapist and became a hypnotherapist, and then started doing regressions, and then he started doing in utero regressions, and then he started doing past life regressions, and then he started doing between life regressions.
Wow.
So he would take people through a past life. He would go, anything else from this life that you think you might want to learn before we move on, and they'd go, "No, I think I'm good." And he said, "Okay, so let's go to the last few moments of that incarnation and tell me when you get there." And they'd go, "Okay, I'm there." And you go, "So just describe to me what's happening." The person would say, "Well, I'm feeling kind of tired and I'm sitting at my desk, and I think I'm just going to put my head on the back of my arm and take a little nap. And oh, I'm looking at the back of my head. I'm floating up out of my body. That's me down there. I'm up here. And he said, and what happens next? And what happens next? And what happens next? And that's what the book is about. It's what
Wow.
happens in between lives, which
Yeah.
is just as complex and hierarchical
Yeah.
and objective driven as incarnate life.
Yeah.
It's just without judgment. Everybody in Soul Central wants you to do the best you can possibly do.
Yeah. That's
Which is
really
all I want to do with my clients. I just want you to have the best life possible.
yeah, Alan, that's what we call in the McLuhan world the resonating interval, the in-betweenness. And it's resonating.
That's beautiful.
It's not the hand touching the hand that is tactility. It's the space between, you know. And so I have one more little question comment, and then I want to suggest we just do a part 2 because we've done 90 minutes.
Oh,
And,
beautiful. It went
this
so fast.
yeah, no, and this can go down the road. It's like 2 or 3 months we can book part 2 because uh, I have a lot of dates booked up, so there's no rush. But I started doing these part 2s in the last 2 months, and it's amazing because I've sort of pulled back a little, trying to get the questions in 90 minutes.
Gotcha.
And I found myself now pulling back, and I'm booking these part 2s. And now you're the first one there's no way we're going to get it done in 2 parts. Now, I'm actually proposing because literally I have about 150 questions. I do about 40 in 90 minutes. We got to 10. So if you calculate it, 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever. So here's the thing. There's a couple people who have verbal abuse happening or sporadic. There's certain ways to word it. Difficult behavior to deal with, and it's easy for people to go, that person's an asshole. They're not a pleasant person, whatever, name calling doesn't work.
No, it
But
doesn't.
it's some of these people have turned me off, and it's like, okay, I don't want to deal with this person. I want to sort of avoid them. I don't need them in my life, blah, blah, blah. But I know I said this to someone recently. I said, so-and-so has verbally abused you, but that's her way of saying to you, I'm reaching out to you and I need you and I love you, but the way it's coming out of my mouth doesn't sound like that. That's their way of saying that. So I got to look the other way and go, okay, but that's very difficult. So, I'm just wondering your thoughts on that in regards to what you just taught me so well in your last, 10, 20 minutes specifically on that kind of issue.
So only for you, Jerry.
Yeah.
The path is youth.
Yeah.
So let the dying die.
Yeah.
The path is life. So let the lying lie.
Yeah.
Our friend Don.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I said that at a lecture at Wayne State with all these heavy lefty politicals. This was many years ago. And I says, the only thing you can do with Trump is love him. And they were ready to shoot me and kill me. Yeah. And I say, in Venice, we don't hate. And one of my political activist friends says, I hate. And it's an inspiring emotion for me to be active and do positive things. So, I mean, it is boiling down to words, but yeah, I think.
So do you know, did you recognize that quote?
No, tell me it again. The path is PATH.
The path is youth,
Yeah.
so let the dying die. The path is life, so let the lying lie.
Yeah.
That's the last line of I Feel Like Acid from Strictly Personal by Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band.
Oh my God. What a way. So the name of the song is what?
I feel like acid.
Acid. That is
It goes
amazing.
like this. The path is youth, so let the dying die. The path is life, so let the lion lie. Nobody else in the universe will ever hear me do that.
I'm gonna look this up. I want to be clear. The path is the first one, PATH, and the second one is past, PAST.
No, they're both the path.
They're both the path. Yeah.
The path is life and the path is youth.
That is amazing. Yes.
Well, that was our philosopher friend, Don Van Vliet.
The stars are matter, we are matter, and it doesn't matter. I think in this case, Alan, it's mattered. It was in the light for us to meet because somehow your face, your thumbnail was a picture of Van Fleet, and I saw it. I don't do
That's
Facebook.
right. No, it's on my Facebook page. It's
Yeah,
a
and
picture.
I saw it on Susie's
That's right.
laptop somehow,
right.
and I goes, "Who is that?" And then we connected, and this has been amazing because my opening notes on the first page of this interview was, I had healing arts, beef heart, and I was like, how am I going to slip beef heart in? So what a way to end part one. That was so well done.
You asked about influences, and we got Henry Miller, and we got
Yeah.
Janoff and John Upledger. The one we didn't get was Frank Zappa.
Yeah. Well, that's another one. We'll take
another time. I just want to show you. I want to show you my favorite book.
Yeah, please.
Because the quote from this book is, "The creatures here are so easily offended."
Oh, wow. The creatures here are so easily offended.
That's what Alice says after the Cheshire cat blows her off, and the March Hare and the Mad Hatter blow her off.
That is amazing.
The creatures here are so easily offended.
That is so beautiful. Alan, it has been so wonderful, truly enlightening, and I appreciate your time and energy, and I appreciate how articulate you are. You don't talk in academic social worker terms. You talk to me in grounded words where I can understand, or I feel like I'm understanding what you're saying. So I really want to thank you for doing that. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I know this will never end and we'll keep talking forever and ever. But definitely book part 2. And I look forward to parts 3 and 4 as well.
Send me a schedule of possible dates again, and we'll do it.
I appreciate it. And just so people know, Alan, when is the possible proposed release on your book? Is it known yet, or it's still not sure?
There will be a group fund campaign, not to sell the book, to sell personal appearances and workshops.
Yeah.
Books will be free.
Yeah.
That will launch, I believe, on November 13th.
Okay.
And the book will be ready for publication about 12 weeks after that.
Great. And if
So I think we're looking at early February.
and people want to get in touch with you, that is through what?
I have a website,
Yeah,
and the website is Wellness Integration, just the way it sounds,
yeah,
wellnessintegration.org.
yeah.
I have an email address there,
Great,
which is alan@wellnessintegration.org.
great.
And my other email address is presence, PRESENCE
Yep,
.ALAN @gmail.com.
great.
Just so you know, I do inner child work via Zoom. I do past life regressions via Zoom.
Beautiful.
I love people via Zoom. I had to do that when COVID happened and I couldn't see anybody in my office anymore.
It's an amazing medium, and
It is. It
I
really
love
is.
spending this time with you. Thank you
Me
so
too,
much,
Jerry.
Alan.
Thank you so much.
Really, really super cool, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
The best you can do for me is give Susie a big hug for me.
That is easy to do. I will. I just was hugging her at yoga, and that is hugging. You know, my mom taught me the value of hugging. It's a healing thing, and hugging is essential. Cuddling and hugging. Thank you so
I got to
much.
share one teeny little piece with
Oh,
you
please
about
go ahead.
Susie.
Yeah.
When I was working as an agent, I went to see one of Storm and Norman and Susie's shows, and I was young and stupid and arrogant, um, and Susie smiled at me because I was an agent that actually showed up at one of their shows. No agents ever showed up at any of my shows. And Susie looked at me and she sang a song to me, and the song was "I Can't Go Far Without You," and
Yeah.
my heart just melted, and
Duh.
uh, she became one of my favorite people in the universe forever after. So
Forever after. I relate totally. Yeah, it's a
anyway,
beautiful
thanks for
thing.
letting me share that. This
Yeah,
has been really beautiful, Jerry. Thank you so much for your time.
Alan, I loved it. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful story. Over and out for now, but it will continue. Thank you.
You too. Have a good night.